Sorry, let me start again. Nilesh is an author, speaker, researcher, seeker, and a TEDx speaker. Nilesh helps individuals become aware of the deep wisdom and antiquity of Indian civilization so that they truly comprehend, present, or defend the grand narrative of the civilization, unlike most other Indic researchers, because he builds it through scientific acumen and logical reasoning. Over to Nilesh, and thank you so much, Nilesh, again for joining us at 7 a.m. early morning Saturday.
Thank you, Swati. And thank you all. Greetings and namaskar from me to all of you. I wish you wonderful time next 2 days, few hours through this very interesting format that we all are used to, especially through the COVID times, but it's getting more and more a norm, to do most of the things. When I was invited to give this address and one of my friends came to know of it, his immediate comment was, he said, well, I have read a little bit about the Vedic mathematics. And as I understand it, the sutra, like, for example, what you're seeing here, and most of you would have these by heart, Ekanyunena Purvena and Ekadikena Purvena. He says these sutras are not there anywhere into the Vedas. Coincidentally, his last name is Bharadwaj. So I told him a story of Sage Bharadwaj. Whereas Sage Bharadwaj, he spent consecutive 3 lifetimes studying different Vedas. So he had studied 3 Vedas. And you can say the Parmeshwar, the Ishwar, was so pleased with these hard efforts of Sage Bharadwaj that he appeared, he came to him and he said, if you get another lifetime, what would you like to do? And Sage Bharadwaj said, well, I have spent my 3 lifetimes studying Vedas and I have not done yet. So if I get another lifetime, I would like to study the 4th Veda in the sense of the traditional 4 Vedas. And then the deity or the Parmeshwar there, what he does, he lifts a small stone in his hand and shows on the horizon like a couple of hills. And he says, look, what you have studied is like this small stone. And all the Veda is out there. The term that is used in the Vedic literature that you see in narrating this story is, he says, Ananta Vai Vedaha. The Veda, as in knowledge, is infinite. So when someone like Swami Bharati Tirtha represented this, say, I don't know exact timing, but say about 70 plus years ago, it is that wisdom that is out there. If you look at Bhagavad Gita says the same thing. In fact, yes, there is a wisdom we try to capture in books, we try to capture in sutra, but it is out there. We are trying to give it a shape in the form that is elegant, that's precise, that's pragmatic, that's creative, and most important, that is useful. Something becomes innovative only if it is useful. And so Bhagavad Gita also says, Chandansi yasya parnani yastam vedasa vedavid. So the knowledge is not stuck in some book, but it is there out in the nature, in our practical experiencing of nature. Chandansi, the metaphor that Krishna uses is Chandansi yasya parnani, among the branches of this cosmos and among the leaves of this cosmos we see it. So what Bharati Krishna has done, and most of you are familiar with, is these particular sutras. But guess what? That's not the end of it by any means. As we see different challenges coming to us, and the challenges come for different reasons, and I'll mention it briefly. We have to think of elegant ways, precise ways, but even pragmatic ways to solve them. And the litmus test is all of these, that 4 things that you see on the screen, but also usefulness. If it's not useful, then at the end of the day, it's going to be limited. Now, what is possibly useful at one point may not be useful at another time. I don't know how many of you know the story of a farmer and his dancing horse, but this was one time was something felt very amazing. There was a farmer in a village and he had a dancing horse and he would go around different places and perform this wonderful show. So the amazing, curious, elegant, and precise thing about this horse and a farmer was that the farmer used to play a piano, and lo and behold, the horse would dance to the tune of a piano. And this was such a marvel to the viewers that naturally one of the viewers said, this cannot be it. So after the program, he went to where the farmer was staying. And he said, you know what? I know this cannot be. The horse cannot be this intelligent. There has to be something. I won't tell others, but tell me what the trick is, because I have a theory for what this trick could be. And if you don't tell me, if you don't verify, I'm going to go out and say it. So farmer says, okay, I'll tell you what it is. He says, well, my horse, I'm good at piano playing, and my horse is good at dancing. But you are right. It's not true that he dances to my piano. He dances as he wishes. It is me who plays to his dancing so that it appears like horse is dancing to the tune of my piano. The kind of reality that we try to capture either through science, physics, chemistry, and the mathematics, and mathematics becomes the foundation, is like that. You know, the reality is out there. It's like the horse dancing. It is the farmer, that's us. We have to figure out an innovative, elegant, creative way to capture that reality and do it. So mathematics speaking, what do we say? Math is out there, like 7 times 7 is 49, for example. How do we find the ways to capture it, to make it efficient for us to do things? And this changes with time. For example, once the trick is told, and then the novelty may be gone. What I'm presenting here is a quick short metric. Think of this as a sutra, and I'm using that as a metaphor, like understanding Vedic mathematics, or the rules of Vedic mathematics, or the tricks of Vedic mathematics. That's the creativity part. Now, in terms of its application, what's going to happen? So if, let's say we look at the existing sutra, the way you are teaching right now, and the way they are employed, the way they are used, the way they are becoming useful. Let's call this we are here. But with time, and some of you would have already seen that. For example, I was mentioning this Vedic mathematics to a family who was visiting us. And they were saying, you know what? Actually, my kids went to the Vedic mathematics and someone tricked them once. He said, okay, yeah, let's give a problem and I'm going to do it. And the other person also solved it and he solved it faster. Naturally, you can take a guess. He was using a calculator. And that's what I mean by with changing times, with changing science, changing technology, something that was innovative, creative, like think of some of us who have used the log tables, okay, slide rules to do the calculations. Where are they? I mean, still the fundamentals and the creativity still stays with us, but we don't use them because we don't need to. Okay, so things will change. So this is a one thing that if there is a one thing that I want you to share with you, something for food for thought, is as you go through this and as you explore and make this a glorious tradition of Vedic mathematics group and society, think of with the changing times, what are the new sutras that you may be building to solve the older problems, but to solve the newer problems? And how can you use your existing sutras to newer problems for which you have not applied it yet? And by that, I mean actually beyond mathematics. And I'll give you a couple of examples of this. But there are these different ways of thinking of using existing stuff for the existing issues, but also newer issues, and creating newer things for solving older problems, existing problems, but also newer problems. That's how, for example, the representation happens. For example, the power of a sutra, like just the one line, And sometimes we struggle with it. I mean, if I read this and if I'm not familiar with Vedic mathematics, eka nyunena purvena, what does that exactly mean? At the same time, it has the ability to capture a lot of things, like Einstein's E equal to mc square, for example. And there is no one message out of E equal to mc square. There's a lot more that you can extract with your efforts. So that's the sutra is in a way a power of saying little, and the risk that we have is the power of being unintelligible. But on that, let me bring you back to about 100 plus years ago. I think it was 1930, if I remember right. This was the inauguration, the initial show of City Light of Charlie Chaplin, and Einstein was also present. And Einstein loved that movie, The City Lights, and I'm sure most of you have seen it. And Einstein told Charlie Chaplin, he said, you are so amazing. In the whole movie, you don't say a word and people just admire you. And Charlie Chaplin said, well, you are even more amazing, Mr. Einstein, because no one understands what you say and still people admire you even more than me. Okay, so that can be sometime what happens with our sutra. It is understood to us, but that's also true of like a formulas, whether it's a F equal to ma, Einstein, Newton's formula, or equal to mc square, and it really captures a lot. Just as a way of illustration, I'll mention one sutra from one of the 6 darshan shastras of Indian darshanas called Purva Mimamsa, and some of you would be familiar with it. A technique that is, or sutra rather, that is stated to how to comprehend a sentence, how to comprehend the value of specific word or words rather in the sentence. How do we do it? And how that actually becomes a foundation. And I have used that in my corporate consulting to explain how simply regression works. Like, not everyone is a mathematically oriented in their brain. So those people who are fearful of mathematics, let's say, I have used this, for example, and it seems to work very well. So how you can use a sutra that is meant to actually understand a sentence, the understanding the meaning of a sentence in understanding, say, for example, correlation, or many of you would know in the sense of regression, multiple regression, and so on. For example, in Purva Mimamsa, there is this sutra, Jaimini's Purva Mimamsa, so it's like about 7,500 years plus year old. It says, Arthe Katvat Ekam Vakyam Sakanksha Ched Vibhage Syat. I'll not go into the translation of it. That's the nature of a sutra. It's like equal to mc square, like all the sutras that you are familiar with Vedic mathematics. If you want to understand the sentence, but especially the importance of each of the word and its value to the total meaning of the sentence, the relative meaning of the sentence, how do you do it? And that's true with the data. For example, if you have got a set of data for certain variables, how do you make sense out of it? And there is no necessarily one way to make sense out of it. But to find out the optimum solution or the best solution or the pragmatic solution or something that clicks with our experience, what you might do is, for example, you may take one data point out that you think it's outlier. I mean, I don't need to teach you all the math experts here, and rerun the whole thing with that data point removed and see what the difference is before and after. And that tells you the value of that data point and in what way it is affecting your understanding or the correlation or the regression equation. You can also do that for the variables, right? Remove a certain variable, y as a function of multiple x's, rerun the thing and see what happens. Well, that's exactly the same concept with the sentence. If you have a long sentence, take one word out, reread the sentence again. That's what this sutra is telling, and see if the meaning changes or the impact of the meaning changes. And you can start understanding the value of the word that you have removed. Okay, so something that is meant for padadnyan, understanding the sentence, the linguistics, can also be used in mathematics. And my request to you, or suggestion would be, see if you can start thinking along those lines, which is to say some of the sutras, some of the creative things you are using in Vedic mathematics, how do they apply to areas outside Vedic mathematics? One example where actually I don't know everyone's background who is attending this, but it's true that when we have a multidisciplinary thought process, like we come from a certain field and tend to do work in another field, that's when the magic happens. If you look at all the great revolutions, say if you take Western Europe and say 500 years since European Renaissance, like the names that we hear, like Copernicus and Galileo and Kepler and Newton and Faraday and Maxwell and so on, what do you see? Everyone made the revolution. Interestingly, they did not make the revolution in the field they were working. Actually, their expertise was in some other field, but they applied it to some other field. And this combination, okay, just bringing it together of different fields, that's when the magic happens. For example, the last example I want to give you here is exploiting the limits of a naked eye resolution in defining what we call the GPS system now. But I want to briefly talk about the ancient GPS system, or the origin of the nautical mile, or the resolutions of the maps that was used in ancient times. For example, everyone knows the precise pi. Yeah. And sometime, like we want to know the precise value of something for whatever reason. And in ancient tradition, like Madhava's school, the Kerala school of mathematics, you would have heard about it. He just gave a formula also, but he also gave, hey, you want to know a precise value of pi to 11 places. All you have to do is remember this Sanskrit shloka. And if you, as long as you understand what it means, the explanation is below, you can actually know the detailed value of pi precise to 11 places. But it's not, most cases, that's not required. If it's required, there is a way to do it, as many digital places, decimal places you want. But there are other ways of looking at it. For example, a pragmatic value of a pi. Well, we know what the value of pi is, but it's almost like backward calculated, in the sense it's not as important as what we want to accomplish, which is based on our practical experience. And that practical experience is people navigating around the world, okay, before GPS. And I'll tell you how it is coming back. So now we have a GPS system, all the hyperbolas, the signals are sent in hyperbola. When they intersect, we know the exact location of the ship or the aeroplane and so on. In the old times, what was it? Like when you were navigating or even walking on the ground, how far we have traveled, what's a good way of measuring it? And they used astronomy for doing that. So circumference of the earth in nautical miles, if you measure it, or if you go to Google and see it, you'll see it is 21,600. What's the secret of that? Well, the secret of that is, they said it's very difficult to keep track of a distance when you are walking on ground. I mean, in the old times, but even especially so walking on the ocean. Traveling on the ocean. So how do you do it? Well, you do it with the help of something that appears to be fixed. If not fixed, it's predictable. And in the process, like think of the two maps on the left side, the bottom one is how we tend to see the skies in the cities with all the light pollution and other pollution. But if you go away from the cities, away from light pollutions, and especially older times, and even today, if you go to some interesting places, very wonderful, clear view of the sky. So this is how the sky typically looked like. And the naked eye resolution of someone with a good eyesight, the angular distance is 1 arc minute. Now, what's the big deal with this? That means what? You can only see something separated by more than 1 arc minute as possibly 2 different points in the sky. This limit was made use of to decide what Indian astronomy calls the celestial radius. How did they calculate? 360 degree times 60 arc minute, because 1 arc minute is the limit of naked eye resolution. That gives us 21,600. They said, well, guess what? That is the circumference of the earth. And even you don't have to ask the question, which circumference? Going from the polar region or along the equator, guess what? 360 degrees, the distance will change, But as far as you traveling and knowing how far you have to go or where you are, that 21,600 is good, because that's what you're going to observe with your naked eye observation of the sky. Now we plug in the number 2 pi r, the circumference, and it's calculated backwards to a one whole integer number, and that's 3438. Okay, that's the celestial radius in Indian astronomy. Now what happens? The maps are drawn with that level of resolution. So when you are traveling, say, on a boat, and you make an observation based on the calendar, knowing which star you're watching, what time it was expected at a certain latitude, certain longitude, you look at this observation, bring it back to your maps to expect where that was expected. You know where you are, how far you are from your destination. So it was almost like backward forcing for the value of a pi. Okay, somewhat. I mean, we still want to use 3.1 for something, but the pi, the precision on the pi is not that important. What is important is the pragmatic consideration of the natural resolution of the eye. With that, the last one is what? Sanatano Nitya Nutana. That is the foundation of a Vedic principle, which is to say it's a continuous refreshing of our understanding, refreshing of our knowledge, because the things around us are changing. So whatever that is capable of changing all the time to meet the needs of changing times, changing technology, the modern day, what is that, Chat GPT or the AI. If you go back to 80s, you can look at still the old commercial of Excel, Microsoft Excel. And you'll enjoy that. And you say, oh, how funny it sounds now. But it was indeed a revolution at that time. It still is a revolution if you come to think of it, what it does. But with time, we have to change. And that's the principle embedded by Yaskacharya, one of the 6 Vedangas Acharya, Nirukta. He said, Sanatano Nitya Nutana. Okay, our ability to continuously change to the new challenges is what makes us successful. So I wish you all a great time with the conference. And thank you for inviting me again. I will stop sharing. And if there are anytime we can take any question, comments, and I'll let you go ahead with your conference. Thank you all.
Nilesh, thank you. That's very enlightening and a wonderful talk, particularly on the way in which we have this great potential of applying the sutras to not only to new areas of mathematics, but also outside of mathematics itself. And there are certainly a lot of the research papers which the IAVM has got together from all sorts of people. Most of them are to do with applying the sutras to mathematics, which is where the maths is not described by Shankaracharya Tirtha. And of course, that's quite natural, because the mathematics of his day is like 100 years old, and things have moved on since then. The other thing that was very interesting, actually, was to hear about these great people who advanced their subject, as you mentioned, Galileo and Kepler and Copernicus and Newton and Faraday and Maxwell, where they applied what they had been trained in a different area. And of course, there's actually a sutra in Vedic maths which describes that. It's Paravarcha Yojayet, transpose and adjust. Some of the papers we have, some of the researchers do in fact look at how these sutras apply to areas outside of mathematics, and that's largely done through through understanding the psychology behind them. But that is a wonderful vision you have for the really what I would say is that a modern and up-to-date and practical understanding of Veda. So
Thank
thank you so much for that. It was really, really enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nilesh. And we have a few comments for you. Awesome presentation. Thank you, Nilesh. Brilliant presentation, motivating me to explore more. So thank you again, Nilesh, and hope you have a wonderful rest of the Saturday, or you join us and keep listening to more Vedic maths. That's the choice is yours. And then
Thank
another
you.
one is thank you, Nilesh, sir. Honestly, feels like just keep listening on and on. So thank you again for a brilliant start to this 9th International Online Vedic Mathematics Conference. Thank you.
Thank you.
So with this keynote speech, we move on to our next segment of our conference, where we are talking about